Hello, my name is Chris, and this video is demonstrating how to do a T-halving joint. So, first of all, we must make sure that we have all the tools and equipment that we need for the joint that we're going to do. So most important, pencil, sharp, not blunt, so we can get that going. If you need a sharpener, always handy to have. Steel ruler, tape measure, mallet, squares, marking gauges, tenon saw and chisels. Now before we start, make sure that all the tools, so i.e. the chisels, are nice and sharp, so you don't have to keep going backwards and forwards and sharpening them. Okay, so for the T-halving joint, we have our two bits of timber. What I normally do, or what I recommend doing, is putting one to the side because you won't need it for the time being. So, first thing first is to mark your face side and your face edge by just doing a little mark like that. Obviously I'm holding it up like this, so it's a bit hard to do. And then your face side. So it should look something like that. So you can always remember what is your face side and your face edge. Okay, so the first bit with any joints, okay, is the marking out step. Okay, marking out a T-halving joint. Okay, the end result will end up looking like this. Okay, so you have your two bits of timber. We're going to be marking out the first half of the joint first, and then the second. So, first step is, as I said, marking out. What we have to do is we have to measure the width of the timber and the thickness of it. So the thickness is 30 mil, so we half 30 mil, and that is 15 mil. So again, there's many people tell you different ways of doing the joint. My way is just putting a little mark on the 15 so you know it's there. So there's a little marking halfway between. Okay, then what we do is we measure the width on the face side, and that is 45, so half 45 is 22.5 mils. So again, my way of doing it is we come to 22.5 and we do a little mark there. Okay, what we do next is we get our marking gauge. What we do is, well, what I do is I put the pin where I have marked 15. So I just place it into the timber, like so. Push up the edge, which is this bit here, the block. Push it up, right up against the face, and then tighten it. Now, although I've done that, always double check that it is definitely centre. The way to double check it is push it in one side, make a little hole, which you probably won't be able to see, but it's where the black mark is. Turn it over, put it onto the other side, and then do a mark again. Okay? Now this is a brilliant example because it isn't quite in line or quite in centre. Okay? So all we do is we've got two marks, we loosen the marking gauge, and then we just put it between the two marks. Like so, and tighten up again. Again, double check using the same method, putting a pin in there. And now that is centre because the pin is going into the same hole when I transfer it onto the other side. So now we've got our marking gauge set. We always keep that set. Don't lose it, don't let anyone untwist it or use it because you will need it or possibly need it a bit later on. So once we've got that set up, again everyone does it differently. My method is getting the square, and remember we marked the width halfway. Okay, all we do is we line up my square with the mark that we made and draw a faint line. Don't go deep, just a faint line so you can just see it. Okay, easy enough. Okay, so the next step is we're going to mark the shoulder line. Now this is where you can bring in your other bit of timber just to assist you. So what I normally do is you place it on top of the timber and make sure it is nice and flush with the end, okay? And then all you do, make sure it's nice and flush. And don't worry if it's a little bit out of square, because all I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a little dash for my shoulder line. So that little dash there is where my shoulder line is going to be. Then what you do is get you a square and make sure when you come to square your line across, make sure the stock is up against the timber. Like so. And what we do is we line up our little dash, and with only faint line draw across your shoulder line. So you don't want to dig your pencil in and draw, it's just going to be a faint line. Okay, so that's our shoulder line done. So we come back to our our gauge. The next step is roughly so remember your face side and your face edge, the stock of your gauge, place it against the side that you've marked, your face side. Okay, and then all you do is you can either put it up against the bench, which I'm about to do, okay, and you just, not very hard, but gently put your gauge in and you draw and you mark out a faint line. Then what I do is, because you can't see it there at the moment because it is very, very faint, what I do is get my pencil and just mark down the centre. Okay, and then again remembering keeping your face side, we come across the top. Remember, it's a little bit harder on the top because it's the end grain. Okay, but again, you can't see it, but all I do is I'll put my pencil line down. Okay, and that marks out where I'm going to be cutting. And then same again on this edge. We just draw our line. If your lines are not meeting up, so if this line is not meeting up with the line on the end grain, it means that something's gone wrong. Either your marking gauge has come a bit loose, or it hasn't actually been measured properly and you haven't followed the correct instructions. Okay. So if that happens, not to worry. Just mark your mortise gauge, redo your gauge, and just gauge it across. Again, once we've gauged it, get our square, put the stock up against the face side. Okay, and then what we're going to do is the shoulder line that we drew, we're just going to square it across. Okay, so that is now ready to be cut. It is ready to be, it's all marked out and ready to cut. So the next step is we've now got to mark the other part of the joint, okay? So what we do is we find the centre from this point here to this point here, so the length. So we measure the length and then half it. So the measurements I'm giving here now might be different to what you have in front of you, okay? Because with the joints, they're all different lengths and different widths and thicknesses, okay? So don't just go by my measurements here. So again, find halfway the length, we just do our little mark. Then what we're going to do is what I do, and again people do it differently, is with a very faint line, square it down, okay? Then again we measure. So the width of your other bit of timber is 45, and half 45 is 22.5. So we come to the line that we've just squared across, find 22 and a half, and then transfer it onto the other side. Before we do that, we always check. Always check. Okay, so what I've done is I've just checked the width of this bit of timber with the marks, and they are just inside, okay? So with all your marking out, you always double check your measurements. Then what we can do is we can square those lines down. Again, having the stock of your square up against the timber. So, the next step is we've now marked the face side. We now got to go to the face edge, okay? So what we do is we don't square the lines right the way down, we just do a little mark. So I know roughly where we're going to be cutting. So we come back to our gauge, making sure that the stock of the gauge is up against the timber correctly. Same as last time, all we do, place it up there, push it into the timber, slide down. Okay, and then again, pencil line all the way across. Okay, and while we've got it on this side, we just square the lines down. So you should end up with something like that. Okay. Then all we do is, again, we do the same process on the other side. So we do our little marks. Stock up against the face side and then gauge it down. Sometimes you might have to do the gauge a couple of times. Ends up like that. So that's now marked out and ready to be cut, and this one is now marked out and ready to be cut. So the marking out step is now over. The next step is the cutting and chiseling part. So I will start with the tongue part of the joint. What we do is we can clamp it into our vise at an angle, not at a steep angle. The reason why we do it at a steep angle is because we don't want to cut straight down the timber. Okay? So again, with your tenon saw, hopefully it'll be sharp so it cuts easier for you. We go on the inside of the line, okay? You don't want to cut on the outer side of the line, and you don't want to really cut on the actual line itself, because when you come to fit it, if you've cut it just that 1 mil out, and then you'll have to start again because there'll be that gap there. Okay, so we cut it within the line, making sure that you're following the line still. Okay, and what I'm doing is I'm slowly coming to the bottom of my shoulder line here. Once I've got to the bottom of the shoulder line, which is there, what we do is turn it over, clamp it in the same way, and repeat the process. So cut on the inside of the line, all the way down to the shoulder line. And then what you can do is stand it up in the vise. Because you've got 2 saw cuts there already, you can just put your saw in and cut down. But you must always make sure you are following the line at all times. Okay, you don't want to overcut your shoulder line. And all we do is grab our bench hook, you can either clamp it down into the vise or have it up against the bench. If you have it up against the bench, you must always make sure that the little stock is up against it, okay? So, then what we can do is we cut down our shoulder line. Again, making sure it's on the inside of the line. Okay, you don't want to overcut. Okay, sometimes if it's like that, it just means that there's still a little bit to cut down. Okay, so all we do is we just put it back into the vise. Okay, cut it down again, come back up to it, and there we go, comes off easy as that. Okay, what you can do then is you can give the inside cheeks a bit of a clean with your chisels, okay? Okay, I would always have it facing the other way around, but for this purpose and for you to see, I'm doing it this way. So along the edge here, where your shoulder line is a little bit where the saw hasn't got to. So you can either get a chisel, make sure it's nice and sharp, okay, and all you're doing is you're not taking too much off, is you're just going along, making sure that everything's all right. And then what you can do is you come in from the front and just dig your chisel in like that, which I'm about to do now. Okay. So you're only taking off that much which is on the chisel. You don't want to be taking any more off. Okay. That is now all cleared up and half your joint done and ready. So we put that to one side for the moment. Then what we do is we get our other bit of timber, which we've marked already. So the same with this one. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be cutting on the inside of these two lines here, all the way down to where I've marked. Okay, and then what we can do is to make your life easier when you chisel it out, is you do a couple of saw cuts in the centre, which I'm about to demonstrate. So, inside of the line, okay, as you get closer to the bottom, always double check. Okay, and I'm going to leave that one now. Flip it over, do exactly the same. Make sure it's always on the inside of the line. Okay, so I've cut the 2 lines. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut a couple of rough lines. Okay, so as I say, with the rough lines, it doesn't matter. You don't have to square them across, because at the end of the day, from that line there and that line there, all of this is going to be taken out. Okay? So, we'll do one more. Okay, so now we've cut our lines, we can now start to chisel it out. Now, we don't want to chisel anything below that line there, so that's why I've cut it down to that line, so when we chisel it out, it'd be easier. So, we clamp it into our vise, making sure we can still see the line, but it's safe so it doesn't come out. We get our nice sharp chisel. Okay, with chiseling, okay, what you don't want to do is go directly putting your chisel on the line and cutting it out. We do not want that, okay, because it will ruin the timber and it will splinter all the timber underneath, okay. So what we do is we start from the top, okay, and we're only taking off little bits at a time. And what we're doing is we're working our way into the centre. Okay, so if I can show you what I mean. We're only taking bits down and we're working our way down to our line there. Okay. So we keep going until we get to the bottom. And then what we do is we turn it around in our vise, clamp it back down, and repeat the same process by chiseling from the top and working our way down. So as you can see, the reason why we put the saw cuts in is because it makes it a lot easier to chisel out, because you're only chiseling a little bits out at a time. Whereas if we didn't put the saw cuts in, you'll be taking out one big chunk at a time, which can splinter your timber. So as you can see, we're starting to get a little hill as such, in the centre. Okay, so the right way of doing it is this step. So you've chiselled out down to your shoulder line and your shoulder line there. Don't go any below that, okay, because otherwise it will ruin when you come to fit it all together. So all we need to do now is take this bit out the centre, okay. So again, working your way slowly. So this is the point where you have to be careful when you chisel, because if you tap it too hard, then the whole thing could break off easily, okay? So you've just got to be a bit careful at this point as you get close down to the line. Because what you want to end up doing is having your chisel nice and flat. What you don't also want to do is chisel, all the way through, okay? Get to the centre when it's nice and flat to about there, turn it around, and then repeat the same process. So I'm now going to turn it around. Always make sure you clear your space so you can see what you're actually doing. At this point, you might not even need the mallet anymore, because what you can do is you can use your muscles, okay, and just gently chisel the last remaining bit out. Okay. The same again, you just want to clear out the edges, okay, of where you cut down where your shoulder is going to be, okay, so you just clear out the edges. Okay, and you should end up with something like that. Okay, you can clean it up a bit more if you wish to make it nice and smooth. So, now is the testing point to see if it fits together. If it's too loose, then unfortunately you've cut too far over the line. If it's too tight, we can work on it. So, as I was thinking, because I can't get that in there, I can still see a bit of the line. Okay, so if you can still see a bit of the line and it doesn't fit, you can cut that line down. Okay, but you've always got to think for yourselves here and think, well, hang on a minute, you know, should I cut it, should I not? Should I see if I can chisel it or not? Okay, in some instances you might just need to use a chisel just to take a little fraction off. Okay, but for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the tenon saw and then clean it up with a chisel. Okay, now when you come to use the tenon saw, you're only taking off a little bit. Okay, so I've only taken off a little fraction. Then what I do is I clamp it back down, and I just use the chisel to clean it up. Okay, and have a look again. Until it fits. So again, with mine, I still have to take a little bit off. But this time, what I do is I will show you the way to use it with a chisel. So all you do, line it up and make sure it's lined up. Make sure that the chisel is upright, because if you're going in like that, you're going to make a slope, which you don't want. Going in like that, again, you make another slope. So make sure it is upright and just do a tap, okay? Okay, once you've got it going, you can then see whether or not you've actually got it straight. And then again, clean it up. And then eventually, if it's a nice tight fit, that is what you want. Obviously if it's too tight, then it won't, then you still need to cut a little bit more off. What we don't want to see, okay, is we don't want to see people getting mallets and just going like that at your joint, okay? The only reason why you don't want that is because it will damage the timber on top, okay? If for whatever job you do that, make sure you get a bit of timber, then whack it. But for the joints, we don't want to see that because you can easily splinter the shoulders of your joint. Okay, so mine does fit, but all it needs now is just that little bit more taken off. Okay, and all you do is you just keep repeating the process. It is better to have it too tight because you can adjust it, and then too loose where you can't adjust it. So again, I'm only taking a fraction off. And then we clean it up again. Voila! Now that's the sides done. Okay, it isn't completed yet, okay, because we've now got it to fit and it's nice and square up there. All we need to do is just make sure that this bit here is nice and flat, okay? That's the last thing we have to do. So again, make sure it's in the vise properly. So, for some people it might take a bit of time to do, but if it takes you a bit of time and you get it perfect first time, you get it signed off. Okay, if you rush it, okay, that's where things do go wrong. Okay. Okay, so that now fits. Sometimes, so as you can see here, there's not really a gap at the bottom. Okay, and it's nice and flush. The top does need a bit of adjusting. Okay. But it is flush there. And that is a T-halving joint.